Hey, how come we're
You're what?
like off centered?
I gotta do this.
Okay. I'm like thinking, Chris,
There you go.
we could.
Much better, right? In the middle.
I like that TV behind you.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, except it really messes with your lighting.
It, it also takes away some of the bounce light I
Reflection
was
of
getting.
the,
The reflective of you guys all
But
up
you're like
there.
super white now.
I might turn that off in a second.
Oh, that
turn
could be
some of
that.
those down.
That could be that light, huh?
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna switch back to you guys. I'm gonna find you a cable to do that. And in the meantime, take a look. We're on the stream.
Oh, we are.
Hey, we're
Hello.
live. Welcome to Philly After Dark. Is that what you call it?
No, .night.
Philly.night. I'm stuck with that name now.
Can I have After Dark?
You can call it After Dark.
No, I know.
except-
It's your show.
Hey, everybody. We talked about Visual Studio 2019 tonight, and I think it was a pretty good success seeing what's new, and then really what hasn't changed. A lot hasn't, but the one thing that I noticed people got hung up on right away was that file new project experience. That hasn't changed, and I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, I bet you that hasn't changed in at least 10 years, maybe 15. Maybe.
I don't know. I disagree because if you remember, well, I don't know if the experience changed, but when you could, I remember about 5 to 7 years ago when you would create a web API, it would be create a web API, create a such and such, create this, and then they changed it to just create an ASP.NET.
Yes,
And then you go into
right.
ASP.NET, and it was like, well, what do you want to create? I want to create an MVC app. I want to create a web API. I want to create, so to me, the experience did change at some point in the last 5 years, but I don't know. I mean,
I think this experience of
I didn't play
okay,
around with it. So.
I say, well, I mean, I say create new project, and then, you're sitting there going,
There we
you're
go.
sitting there saying, well, wait a second, I don't know what to do, and
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at us on
the
the screen
first
behind me.
class feature now is clone or check out code. That's the top
Yeah.
item in the menu now. It's not
What project?
file new project. What are you making? Are you making a C# project? Are you making a desktop app? Like, it's no. You're cloning some other repository, which is probably more accurate with what's going on at work. I don't care if you're on Git or not. That, like, who is going to work every day? Like, how many years go by before you get to file a new project that actually is really going to be a product at work?
So I do file a new project about 3 times a year.
You do, well, 3 times a year, and that, I think you might be ahead of the game for a lot of people. But that's as part of consulting projects.
Probably.
So
Yeah, that's why.
yeah,
But you're right. I mean, if I was a full-time employee of a software dev shop, that would be way different because it would be, hey, I'm new here. What do I got to do? Clone this and get it down on your machine and start working on it.
there are some organizations that I worked for where I think I never once. I mean, I probably did file a new project in order for me to learn something, right? But I think there were entire organizations where I never once, like, I didn't create a new project that was going into source control to be built and sent out. So yeah, so we have some folks on the stream. We have look, we have Halcyon here. Good to see you. We do have our after party going. So again, we talked tonight about Visual Studio 2019, and on yesterday was the launch event, and I don't know if you watched the launch event at all.
I was actually making money for my company.
Okay, I understand.
So I missed most of it.
So I watched a lot of it after it happened because it went up. There
that.
was the stream was available to scrub back to, and now they're all available on YouTube.
Oh, good.
But if you're looking for them, one of the issues that we have is getting people to our content. And so we do have a GitHub site at Philly.net, and it's just github.com/Philly.net. And a little bit later, we'll show everybody where you can get tonight's content. So, times have changed, I think, since Visual Studio 2015 or 2017, because we now have two other IDEs. We have Visual Studio for Mac, which we didn't talk about at all tonight.
Correct.
And we have Visual Studio Code, which is a huge hit.
Yes.
A massive hit. My understanding is #1 editor in the world. People who I know in the industry who with their Mac are building sites on the mean stack or something, maybe they're using Ruby or Python, who maybe we're using Sublime or Atom, and we're never going to get close to a Microsoft product, are using Visual Studio Code.
Yes.
So that's an amazing accomplishment. And at the same time, that team is very much about being open and serving everyone.
They are.
Like they don't. This isn't about trying to like reel people back to .NET or something. That doesn't matter because Azure deploys everything, right? So,
Sure.
yeah, I mean it does, right? Azure deploys everything. So, when you launch a new flagship IDE in this world where you have other choices, does it change a developer mindset at all? Or, I mean, like, how's it been for you? Do you live in the big IDE? What do we call the big IDE? We call it Visual Studio 2019. It doesn't have a
Loaded.
different name.
No,
Loaded.
it's Visual
Classic.
Studio. No classic.
No, not classic. Okay.
A legacy? No.
That was said once.
I know.
I remember that. It
So
was corrected very quickly.
yes. So I live in both.
Okay.
Especially on the current project because so I'm still kind of old school in that when I create even an Angular app, I kind of like a solution to surround it so I can open it up in Visual Studio normal, but
Just do normal.
yeah, normal. I don't know.
Visual Studio, right? That's the
proper.
one,
How's
right.
that?
Visual
No.
Studio 2019.
20 or
That's the best we
or
can do, 'cause that's what it's
2017
called.
yeah. So in any event, that would be me. But going forward, I think what's going to happen, and I see this especially on my current project and future projects, is there's Visual Studio for like your web API. It has everything like that, services, microservices, web API, and that's where you're going to live and breathe. But then there's, well, now I have my client application over here, and that's Angular, or it's JavaScript or Vue or React or something. And people are just, they're separated,
Okay.
and it's two different experiences. And I don't, not that I struggle with the IDEs themselves. I can work in code, I can work in Visual Studio. My challenge is, let's say, and I think this happens no matter how I get the code. But when I go into Visual Studio to get the project code, I say, go ahead and fetch and pull, and now I have it. And then I go and I open up code. Code immediately thinks, hey, you have 20 items that are changed. And I'm like, I didn't change them. I just got them from source control, and I have to discard the changes in Visual Studio Code because for whatever reason, I don't know if it's how I'm getting it. Probably me. But it immediately thinks that I'm not in sync, that I have made changes to the files that need to be pushed, and that's not true. I discard those changes, and I have the latest code. So it's just some weirdness with.
What about carriage return line feed issues? Because are you working on a team where it's mixed Mac developers and Linux developers?
No.
The only reason I say that is
That's
this
a good
recently
point.
is something that I've read about, is that a team where maybe your front end developers, I mean, they might all have their Mac, and then they commit to Git, and I never remember which is which. They're line feed only.
Yes.
And then so then you pull it out on Windows, and Git is doing you a favor. It thinks it's doing you a favor, it's converting it, but
Correct.
now it's a change, right? And so I think what you do as a team is you configure Git to do one way.
Yeah, you can configure it to say, check it out as this style, whatever the native style on the machine you are, but always check it in as, this style.
Yeah.
So, that's not the issue. It's some goofiness.
It's just Tony.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm okay with that. I live with that every day.
Problem exists between keyboard and computer. So,
Are you sharing your screen? I don't see anything coming down the wire.
So let's see.
He is not. This is the proper answer.
I have duplicate on. Should I try extend?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Let's see what happens.
What could go wrong? Extend normally means that you're going
Well,
to.
yeah. Now
Now you've lost
now what am I
half
gonna
your
do?
screen.
Now you lost everything?
No, it's
no,
still
I
there.
didn't. I'm just saying, like, how would I go about doing any work on here?
Is this actually plugged in wherever?
Let me unplug this real quick and
Yeah, do
see
that.
now the video went off, so that tells me that something happened. And now plug the video in, and it's just thinking.
This is a live show, folks. You can tell because look
okay.
at the technical issues we have.
All right, we're learning.
We're
We
not
thought
that bad
tonight
at
we
it.
were going to try and see. Now it's not. it didn't act like it did anything there.
Well, did you? Oh, I was gonna say, what about if you do Windows P? Maybe it wasn't sharing anymore.
Well, you were going to show something, weren't you?
I did. I wanted to.
Okay.
That was the idea, is that we would add that tonight and say, hey, let's do a tiny bit of code besides just talking.
I'll tell you what, why don't we do this? After you. One, guys talk.
At the laptop?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, you
Do
want
you
us
need
to
it?
bring it over? Here.
Here, just give me the cable. Separate.
Yeah, I know. What was up with that, man? Come on. We paid a lot for this desk.
All right. So, Visual Studio 2019 features. Now, live share is not a 2019 feature.
No, it's
it
been
came
there
out
for a while.
in the last cycle, but it's growing. What do you think about it?
I haven't used it.
Okay.
Well, I've experimented with it. I guess
Okay.
I should say that. So, but I have not had a chance to use it. You know, my experience in debugging is, hey, can I call you on Skype?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
so-
Absolutely. Can we screen share? Can you start a WebEx?
Yes. Can you?
And then,
No, we
yeah.
don't do WebEx.
So I will give you this, is that I think there's potential there to live share into somebody that's having a problem and go ahead and set breakpoints with them
Yes, that would
and
be
step
neat.
through the code with them. That could be pretty cool. And what's really amazing, and we didn't totally show this tonight, was in certain contexts, not in all of them, but like, for example, let's say you're building a Node app
Yes.
and I don't even have Node installed on my machine. You start debugging and a web browser pops up on my machine and I can hit breakpoints in your code and I don't even have Node
Well,
running.
that's pretty cool.
It's pretty amazing. It's not every platform, but the list is pretty long. And I did try to include, so in the show notes for this show and also for the presentation meeting, we're going to put the link to our GitHub README. It gets to be a little bit of a tangled mess where everything is, but
Tangled web we read.
yeah, the web, right? So you can at least go there and check out. I did put a link to Visual Studio Code's platform support, and the one thing that we saw, if you watch the Connect is an event that was held in the November, December-ish timeframe.
Yeah.
And it was a live streamed event. If you go watch that event, they demonstrated live share where someone on a Mac who clearly can't run a WinForms app was still getting a WinForms app sent over the wire to them to interact with.
I think I saw that
It's
presentation.
unbelievable. I was hoping that it was ready because I wanted to show that tonight and just blow people away. We had our viewer Meg on with her Mac. I was gonna say, wouldn't that be awesome if that all worked and she pushed a button? But I don't think that support is ready, and I'm not 100% sure if it's going to be interactive.
Yeah.
Maybe it will be someday. You know, the live share team.
Next release.
The live share team is amazing. The Visual Studio Code team is absolutely amazing. So, you know, we have this new IDE, but now the question is, when does it get to work? Because for a lot of folks who they work in an enterprise, they work somewhere, you might not have just been able to go install it today.
So I would be able to.
You would be able to, yeah. Not everyone does.
No, I wouldn't use it on my current project. I will admit that, but I can install it side by side on my machine currently.
Right.
And the next project that I work on, I guarantee they would encourage me to use Visual Studio 2019.
Yeah, and I think that side by side has worked really well for me. I've been using with the Visual Studio installer. I've had 2017 and its preview side by side for years, and then when the 2019 preview came out, they were just all there. I know a lot of people get nervous because there used to be a time when if you wanted to install multiple Visual Studios, it either wasn't supported or there came the day where there would be guidance like, okay, install 2002 first,
yes,
then install 2003, then install 2005. Like there was this guidance to do things in order, and now it's
make
like,
sure these are in these directories, you know.
And now it's like do whatever, which is nice. It's nice. One of the things that we didn't get to talk about, but if you watch some of the launch event, is there was some remarking about how much quicker it is.
I heard that. And
my understanding is that the team, more and more things are being pulled out of process. So the Visual Studio process hosted the entire world, including extensions. And so there were extensions that would slow Visual Studio down. And so now we kind of live in this world where they're pulling stuff out of process so that Visual Studio can focus on doing, you know, maybe whether it's loading files or maybe compiling code. and you're not sitting there waiting on some UI
Yeah.
from another piece. So I think that's pretty cool.
Speaking of extensions, real
Yep.
quick, if I may,
No, go
are
ahead.
there any extensions that you must have installed in 2019 out of the gate?
Out of the gate. So 2019's coming with live share. That's pretty cool. I
Okay.
can't say that's a day-to-day driver for me, but I think
Oh,
it will
yeah.
be. Rob was talking a little bit about the GitHub extension.
Okay.
See, I've installed 2019 on 3 different machines in the last 2 days.
Oh, jeez.
And it was because I knew we were doing this lab tonight.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I install it, I start using it, and then, okay, now hold on. Let me go double check that install experience again.
Okay.
And
Just uninstall and reinstall.
So what he was saying is that the GitHub extension for 2019, even if you check the box, he didn't have it pre-installed, but that wasn't my experience on the laptop that we're going to use tonight. But then again, I kind of starting to forget which one was which. So the GitHub extension is pretty cool. I have to admit, I'm still a command line Git person. I got to know it really well. I've done workshops on Git. So like I've gotten to know Git pretty well, and I actually fear the GUIs a little bit. I'm afraid that I don't know what they're doing. But I think the time has come. What I saw out of the GitHub extension in the launch event yesterday, some of the integration with things like Azure DevOps and even with GitHub, where there was a GitHub issue related to a pull request and they were commenting in line in Visual Studio and those comments were being pushed up to GitHub. I thought, well, okay, I can see that maybe people are getting ready to just stick with this thing here.
So I actually, every once in a while, I install the GitHub extension and then I guess install is a good word for it. And then I uninstall it or disable it because for me, Visual Studio's built-in Git functionality, just normal Git that says,
stuff,
you know, I can say go to this Git repository, clone it, boom, I'm done. I don't, you know, even if it's really out on GitHub, you know, any place. I've used Bitbucket. I've used it with Bitbucket, and this is just the normal Git built-in functionality. I've used it with Bitbucket, used it with GitHub. I've used it with GitLabs now, and I've used it with a Git instance, like another Git instance I can't remember. But it just kind of works for me, and I kind of like that because I'm just doing your basic functionality. I am just fetching, pulling, pushing, commenting, you know, and Chris is my go-to guy for when I have Git issues because my a coworker seems to mess up our pointers. He did that this week, and I was able to fix it without calling you this time. On the branches,
I call them pointers because to me, once you get the concept that a branch is just pointing to a commit, then you kind of forget that they're not these thick trunks of code. It's really just
I want my thick trunks of code back.
Well,
honestly,
and that's how TFS is, right?
Well, yeah.
So and Subversion especially.
Subversion,
I mean, Subversion is all about you branch code and it is
make
a different file. And it's not that way.
No, it's not, and it throws off the one developer because he wants to revert. We put something in master, and he's like, "Oh, I know exactly what to do. You're doing a git force,
git push.
Yeah, so he
force
figures
to say,
out
take my commit.
Yeah, so what he actually did was, if this was master, he found this commit hash over here that was on a branch or a sprint branch over here. He got that commit hash and forced it on our master. And I'm like, no, that's wrong. Luckily, being the slowpoke that I am, and sometimes in getting code, I was able to take what I had on my machine and force that back to be the master pointer.
Yep.
And that worked out nice. But it's you know, if you don't know what you're doing and you rely on like the UI, and that's really where I was heading with this, and you rely on built-in tools, you end up saying, oh, I can just revert it. Well, revert isn't the same thing. It's not saying, oh, I just want to take this file and put it back here. No, it's trying to juggle pointers around.
It doesn't take the commit back. It creates a new commit.
Yes.
That tries to undo what you did in the
all
previous
those code changes. And
where
it's a
git
nightmare.
reset actually picked it up and moves it.
Yeah.
So we have a comment from Meg, Meg was awesome tonight. She joined us remotely on our live share session on a Mac. It was super awesome. And she says Git Kraken will change your world. And I have to agree. everyone here, you're probably sick of me. Git Kraken is my favorite Git GUI. I leave it open all the time because to me it is the accurate representation of the commit graph. That is how the commit graph looks. And it will show you where you're pointing, your branches are pointing, where your origin repo is pointing. You add another upstream. That's what we call it when you have a remote pointing back to your own fork, right? And it's just all perfectly clear as to this is how my repo is laid out locally and in the cloud, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my favorite. It's the only GUI I use.
My coworker uses shoot, just went blank.
To be fair, I have to do a survey of things like source tree and tower.
Source tree.
And the reason why is because every so often I'll be doing a workshop or a presentation and somebody will say, well, have you tried source tree lately? And I'm like, it's been a couple of years. Because once I found Git Kraken, I just paid for pro and it's all over. Like this is the one. It's the most accurate depiction of what's really happening in Git, in my opinion, being totally unfair to the rest of the GUIs that I haven't tried for 2 years. And every you right click on things to do stuff, it's not sugarcoating it. There isn't a sync command. There's like push, pull, reset, which is what you would have done at command line anyway.
Right.
So I'm a big fan.
Yeah, and I don't use GUIs all that often, but
when I do,
yeah, it is the Git Kraken is the one that I use, and I know when people got stuck like, how do I get out of this? Like, well, get this, load it, see what it looks like, and then start to unwind what it.
Yeah.
So.
I know there are folks out there who will say like, come on, command line, just figure it out from git log. And it's like, I don't have that kind of time.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong, it's a visual log. It's not lying to you. There, and I'm not trying to disparage any of these other products, but I've looked at them and I look at their history and I go, but that's not actually how the repo is laid out.
Right.
The repo is commit. That's what it's about. Commits that point backward to their parent. That is the number one thing. So now that I'm in on the Git soapbox for long enough, we were going to talk about Blazor. So
yeah. Well, actually, I think you were going to talk.
I'm going to talk about Blazor. So what is Blazor? I think what I'll do is Scott Hansen
back up.
has a nice. He has a nice.
Hey, look at us. We look professional there on that screen.
Let's take a look at what Scott Hanselman said about Blazor just a couple weeks ago. So if you're in the .NET community and you're kind of plugged in like we are, you probably saw a demo of Blazor maybe last summer, maybe about 18 months ago, and it might have blown you away because here was Steve Sanderson demonstrating building a website. It felt very much like you were using maybe Razor Pages or MVC because your front end, if you were in MVC views or if you were in Razor Pages, you're using Razor markup, and in your head that Razor markup is just a way to basically say, okay, server, when you're building this page, insert these values here and then send that HTML out, go. But it's still a server-generated page, right? And obviously, SPAs are big. That's why we have Angular. That's why we have React. That's why we have Vue. Because the idea in that methodology is, why don't I ship to the client, to the web browser, basically the template that it needs, and then the code that it needs so that it can call back into APIs and get its own updating.
Yep. And
I think it's to relieve pressure on the server. And also, in some cases, it probably is quicker than waiting for a page refresh, right? So Blazor, as Scott Hanselman says here, is a single-page application framework for building interactive client-side web apps with .NET. So what the heck does that mean?
Can you translate that, Chris?
I think what it means is saying, if you were a longtime .NET developer and you loved that when you had web forms or MVC or Razor Pages, that you could pretty much just stay in .NET. I'm doing .NET on the server. When a request comes in for something for me to do, I'm writing C# code. I might be going back to my database or whatever. And then my front end, if it was web forms, was all those controls. And if it was MVC, it's Razor markup, which is C# based. I want to stay in C#. I want to stay in .NET. That's important to a lot of devs. They're angry at JavaScript. They're angry at the browser.
It's just a bad language.
They're angry at Angular. I'm a JavaScript
it's not an
fan.
anger issue.
I do. I like JavaScript. I don't have anything against JavaScript, but I have rules to my JavaScript, which we
you
can
like
do. That's another
yourself.
show. No. I have rules that that keep it. That's another show. So
We
this
should
show,
mark that as another show.
this
'Cause I
show,
want to hear the rules.
the JavaScript face off, right? Don't get me wrong.
I'll tell you.
Blazor. We're gonna do
Back to
Blazor.
Blazor. Yeah.
So here's the idea. As .NET developers, we have server-side framework. And when I say that, I mean MVC, Razor Pages. In essence, a request comes to the server has to build the page, and then it sends it out, and you try to do it as fast as you can.
Yes.
Well, what if we had the ability to build client-side web code and do it with C# and .NET? That would be crazy. So
that is crazy.
What's the trick that lets this happen? Well, this magical thing, WebAssembly, that has come to our browsers. WebAssembly is a native compiled way for you to basically do everything the JavaScript sandbox can do, except do it natively using the WebAssembly bytecode. Well, how useful is that? Who wants to write WebAssembly bytecode? I don't want to use any kind of assembler or anything like that. Well, hold on. We're not going to do any of that. Really, really smart people, like tools vendors, are going to let us use the languages we like to compile down to WebAssembly. Okay. So, this is what Scott Hanselman says here. .NET code runs inside the context of WebAssembly. You're running .NET in your browser. There is a .NET implementation in WebAssembly running in your browser. Your DLLs go down to the browser, and it runs them. This isn't Silverlight or Flash. This isn't a plugin. The browser supports this.
What version of .NET is it running, Chris?
Well, it's not running .NET Framework.
Yeah.
It's sort of running .NET Core.
Sort of.
But what we have here is a .NET that
based on Mono.
It is based on Mono today. That's what the team is building. In Steve Sanderson's original demo, he found this amazing C# compiler for WebAssembly. .NET Anywhere or something like that.
Anywhere, that sounds
apologize
right.
if that wasn't the name. So yes, they're using Mono, but you can see in this chart here. So what is Blazor? Blazor is when you take a Razor component and you run it in .NET, but because the WebAssembly.NET is compiling, JITting, executing your .NET code. So the first confusion is like, well, then why did they introduce this term Razor component, right? And I think probably the answer is, it says right here, well, Blazor is the client-side hosting module for Razor components. And I think what we should really do is just forget all of that and say, how do you do this in Visual Studio? Okay. So the first issue is that this is Visual Studio 2019 preview. I have already installed .NET Core 3 preview. We talked about it in the earlier show that the home of .NET is dot.net on the web. You don't get that with Visual Studio. You don't get .NET Core 3 preview. Okay. Not in the box. You got to go install it yourself. The other thing you got to do is you need an extension for Blazor. And so I'm going to go online and I'm going to just type Blazor. And I'm going to get an extension called Blazor. And is it already installed? Hold on. Do I already have it installed? Because that would be awesome. Oh yeah, look at that. So the reason why I wasn't sure is, as I was saying a little bit earlier, I've installed Visual Studio in the last 24 hours in order to get ready for tonight. I installed Visual Studio 2019 several times. Yeah. So I was already ready to go. So that's good. So what does that do? Why do I want the Blazor extension? Well, the reason I want it is so that I can create an ASP.NET Core web application, and I can say that I want it to be Blazor in VS 2019. We'll just call it that. Oh, and I have not changed this yet. I like my source to be in source. And I can change that. I can make that my default. But I haven't done it. So let's create the app. And so here I'm getting all these different things I can do here, right? I can say Blazor or Blazor hosted by ASP.NET Core. I still want to come back to what that means. I'm going to go ahead and say, let's do Blazor, a application that runs on WebAssembly. I don't want to get caught up in because there's this terminology now, Razor component, ASP.NET Core hosted, Blazor. Wait a second, what happened to Blazor? It used to be a simple term.
It's a jacket I wear.
Yeah, it used to be a simple term, and now, you know, what's going on here? So what does the Blazor app look like? So it's pulling the dependencies down from NuGet right now. So let's take that opportunity to take a look at the components, okay? Here in main layout.cshtml, we have your base layout for your website. So all we're really seeing right here is the nav menu component. This might look very much like React to you. And we also have this @body tag. So let's take a look at index.chtml. Okay? Index.chtml, that might make you feel like you're in Razor Pages or you're in MVC, right? But instead, this doesn't quite look like it. For one thing, we have this page directive, and we have this funny looking thing. It's some kind of web control or something called survey prompt. What is that all about? Well, Blazor is a SPA framework, first and foremost. That's what it is. It's trying to bring the experience of component-based frameworks like Angular or React to .NET. So when you ask for just the website, that's what the slash means. You're just coming to the website. You're coming to like www.chrisgomez.com. This is on my website or something. This is telling the Blazor routing engine that this component is the one that you want to serve up. This component contains a component. The component's called survey prompt. Well, let's go find that. Well, here it is. It's sitting in shared. What does a component look like? Well, a component has some markup. Just like if you were in Angular, you have some markup in your components, right?
Yes.
So here's some markup, and it looks like HTML. But then there's some code here too. And the code is saying, okay, I expose a public parameter called title. C# developers would be familiar with that. It's sitting down here in the function block, which a little bit. Okay, well that's
Control plus.
Does Control plus work in Visual Studio? Let's do this.
I think it does.
Okay. So I know Control scroll wheel does.
Oh, well, there you go.
But I don't have my mouse. So in this functions block, we are saying that the survey prompt component has a title field or a title parameter. And then look, I can refer to that parameter in my component.
Yeah.
So this component is going to render that HTML, but it's going to insert that. Okay, so now back over in index.chtml, we're filling in the parameter. This is very Angular or React-like or even Vue-like to have components with parameters. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and we'll take a look at what it looks like. This is just a simple app that's hosting a survey prompt, and then we're going to go see there's a counter control that's also being used as a page.
Can I use this as my web page? Is that what you're saying, since it has a counter on it?
Well, obviously, every web page has a counter, right? So
Should.
What I think the key here is that there's all this talk about WebAssembly when it comes to Blazor, but you're not seeing, like, you're just working in some framework that I'm not. It kind of feels familiar if you're an Angular, React, or a Vue developer, but it's clearly not those frameworks.
Yep.
And it's got a very MVC Razor template kind of feel to it, or an MVC view or a Razor page view feel to it. So here it is. Here's that survey component. It's right here. Because remember that survey component had the title code in there. We're also going to see, we'll go look at this counter component later. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the console so we can look at the network. When I'm clicking, live television and somebody behind us. Who knows? Yeah, trash.
It's the code behind us.
When I click me on the counter, we're not seeing any network traffic at all.
Yep.
Okay, now look, you could do this with JavaScript. In fact, you might be saying, so what? You hooked up some JavaScript to a button. Well, let's go take a look at what really happened. Go to Solution Explorer, and we have a page here called the counter page.
Yep.
The counter page it's not just it's a Razor component, because here's some HTML, that says I'm going to take the current count and I'm going to put in the variable current count, whatever that is. And I'm also going to put an HTML button, and for its, what do I want it to do when you click it? I want you to call this method increment count. And this is just sitting right here. So wait a second, this isn't JavaScript.
No.
This is C#. But I'm back over here. If you were an MVC developer, you would be expecting page refreshes. I should be seeing stuff happening in the network tab, and I'm not seeing it. So this is all happening in the front end because the .NET DLL, my assembly, my code was compiled, sent down to the browser, which we'll look at when we refresh in a little bit, and it's being executed in the browser in WebAssembly. So I mentioned that this counter is a page, right? But I also mentioned that it's a component. Well, what makes it kind of special is by putting that page directive, Blazor figures out, okay, if they come to /counter, they want me to display this component as the web page. They want me to fit it in the layout here. Okay, so the layout that we set in main layout. Well, what if we did this? What if we went back to index.chtml? And what if we said, what if we put a counter component here? So the important takeaway here is that I'm building a component. I just added one little directive that said, oh, by the way, this component is the page if you go to /counter. But if you go to index, well, I'm gonna have to rebuild. If you go to index, I want a counter there too. So let's add that in. It's gonna take a little bit to load up, and what I'm gonna do next time when I refresh here is I want to refresh without cache so we can watch everything coming down. There's network. Okay, let me do Control F5, which, well, let's just disable the cache. And then we'll do an F5. And now let's look, what is coming down here? A little bit of JavaScript to bootstrap WebAssembly, but then look at what else came down. Real live .NET DLLs.
Yep.
And mono.webassembly, to your point. The WebAssembly interop is here. It can read and execute .NET right here in the browser using WebAssembly. Here's system.core, here's system.net.http, so that I can make calls back out. It's like JSON
API.
calls.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this isn't browser specific though, right?
No.
I mean, even though it's running in the browser, I don't have to have a certain browser model, what have you.
You do have to have a browser that supports WebAssembly, and so that today is all the major desktop browsers, and I think it's gotten to the point that it's all the major mobile browsers too.
Okay.
There came a day when the web celebrated and said WebAssembly is now on all the browsers.
Okay.
So Edge, Firefox, I'm using Chrome for this right now, but I could use Firefox. I could use whatever I wanted. So what I've done is, remember, I added that counter component, which was a page.
Yep.
You know, if I go to the counter page, there it is. But I added it to the main page, and it's still working, and no network calls being made. So that's what people got excited about, because they said, wait a second, there's a lot of people that love MVC, and they like Razor Pages, and they like that experience of kind of staying a .NET developer.
Yeah.
And now what they're getting is they're getting that without page refreshes. You saw that system.net.http went down, and a lot of us would know that let's see, which one is that? Fetch data. A lot of us would know instantly. We would see that and we would say, oh, you're probably making JSON requests. Well, we're going to go look at this page in a second, but it's a weather forecast page. And let's head down to the function section that calls get JSON async and just request some data from a site. Now the site happens to be local, and it happens to be a JSON file, because that way this little project, if you were on an airplane, you could fire this up and it would all work. You wouldn't actually need real internet
Static
connectivity.
weather, is it always 85?
It always is.
Like San Diego?
But if I change that to be a weather API, this just works.
Good.
So here we are, a little bit more complicated C#, because you've got a weather forecast model that's automatically being generated. The JSON that comes back says date, temperature C, temperature F, summary, and this just picks it up and says, like, fine, I'll just one for one, I'll send it over to, it already knows how to turn a JavaScript date into a date time. I know how to do that, and it turns everything into ints and strings in .NET land. we get back an array of these forecasts. And so what do we do up in our Razor templating code in our Razor component? Well, this Razor templating here, just use C# code. Let's loop through and put the data out as a date string, and let's just go ahead and put out temperatures. So I think the app is still running. If it's not, I may have to run it again. Here it is. So the fetch data example, there it goes. And again, if I was, this time if we see network, we should see the fetching of the JSON. There it is.
Yep.
Oh, no, hold on. I lied. Oh, wait, I have to not disable the cache.
Oh.
So let's do that again. Let's, okay, so here we are, hello world. Let's get a nice clean look here. And then let's go back. Can we see the bottom of this? Say to fetch data. And whether JSON was fetched from our own site, yep, because an HTTP call was made to it. We would do that with Ajax. Like in Angular, you would use the $Ajax, I
yep, think.
And React has a service, and Vue has a service. They all have services.
Yeah.
As a .NET developer, I use stuff in the system.net.http web space. Mm-hmm. I get to stay in that world. So the WebAssembly stuff is super exciting, right? I mean, what do you think of it so far? Have you seen this before?
I have.
Okay.
I think it's interesting. I mean, I'm not completely sold on it yet. I still think, even though I'm not a big fan of JavaScript, TypeScript makes it a little bit more bearable for me. But I still think there's a place to say my front end is this, mm-hmm, and my back end is this, you mm-hmm, know, and my back end is Web API C#, mm-hmm, and my front end is that junk over there.
Well, I think it's what we're all used
Which
to.
Which I use, but I like it.
I think we're used to because you had no choice. The browser was HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And yes, over the years, we have built up libraries. We've built up alternate languages that compile back to JavaScript. We've built up Babel and TypeScript and PureScript and NativeScript and all kinds of things to cope.
Right.
Right. But what we've never done is we've never said, well, I like C#. Why can't I? If I could use TypeScript, which is a way to to pull back from JavaScript, well, why can't it be C#? And that's kind of what this is.
I don't know if it's a way to pull back from JavaScript, but
so I will tell you one of my concerns is there is a little bit of an impedance mismatch, right? Like in the end, you still probably are going to want to know some HTML and CSS because you're not going to be able to build your site, and you might need to interopt with JavaScript anyway, which Blazor has support for. We don't have time to look at it tonight, but Blazor supports that JavaScript interop.
Good.
The question is, could I really live and build a reasonable app, even if maybe it's an intranet app? Could I build an app for my organization that serves 100 users, bang it out quickly using technologies I know on the .NET, in the .NET Core world, and maybe that cost savings is worth it, even if it's not. Oh, you might say, oh gosh, that's not going to SEO very well, and I certainly wouldn't think, don't know. And I'm not saying this is true.
Yeah, no.
Maybe it won't scale to like cloud scale. And look, I actually think the team is working very hard to make that happen. But if you had those fears, there's a lot of us at work who need to build that small internal app for 100 people. And if I can get it done in a couple weeks instead of 3 months, save a lot of money.
Yep.
And a lot of time. And maybe you don't have to become an Angular expert or a React expert or a JavaScript expert. People get excited about the WebAssembly part. So let's go back to when I talked about Razor. Why is the name Razor Components? Why didn't they just call it Blazor?
Yeah.
So the reason is because these components, what I think they realized is they said, this is great, but Blazor we're biting off too much when we use the term Blazor.
Yeah.
Blazor is a semi-magical way for your .NET compiled code to run in the browser thanks to WebAssembly. But this framework, this is a brand new framework. This doesn't have to be client-side. This could be server-side. We're actually building a component-based framework for .NET developers. We had web forms, which was a page-based model that kind of looked like VB.
Yep. We
had MVC, which was let's bring architecture to .NET developers with the MVC pattern.
Yes.
Razor Pages says let's have a page-based pattern, but we don't have a component-based pattern. Now, Razor Components offers a component-based pattern. And, well, what if your Razor components were being executed on the server, and you didn't do all this WebAssembly stuff in the client? What if instead you sent a small JavaScript shim down to the client using a real-time technology called maybe SignalR? And what if that little shim down in the client said, okay, the user clicked on that button, let me use SignalR to fire back to the server and see what the Razor component thinks about that. And the Razor component says, well, let me fire down just the DOM change that you need. That's that's ASP.NET hosted Razor components, which is commonly been known as server-side Blazor. And the first thing I think the first reaction everyone has to that is like, oh gosh, the WebAssembly stuff was so sexy, and now you're telling me it's going to be back in the server. I don't want to use that. Well, server-side Blazor shipping. That's going to be in .NET Core 3. That's what's shipping. That's what is going to be ready, and the magical WebAssembly client-side Blazor doesn't sound to me that it's going to ship with .NET Core 3 on release. So I know that makes a lot of people upset at first, but when you stop and think about it, separate in your mind the SPA framework from the delivery model.
Yeah.
You're learning a framework that lets you now have freedom of choice. Do I want to host on the server? Do I want to host in WebAssembly in a client? Or what if you could do, like start to think now, what if, since the hosting model has been separated, what if you came up with a Razor component hosting model for a Watt, or for IoT, or maybe even other platforms that don't have anything to do with the web whatsoever? Yeah. So I think it was smart of the team to recognize that while they were building Blazor, they recognized, we're actually building two things here. We're building a way to host this in the browser with WebAssembly, and we're also building a SPA framework that's unique to .NET. It's like our own React. So since we're building those two things, why don't we keep them nice and at arm's length, because that might give them some flexibility in the future to do some amazing things.
Maybe.
When I first heard about server-side Blazor, I had the same reaction. I went, oh, I don't care about that. But then I stopped and thought about it, and I said, wait a second. What attracts people to this is I'm in C# all the way. I'm in C# on the server with my web API. I'm in C# on the client. I'm using Razor templating, which I'm already familiar with. That's what makes people excited and stand up and cheer. Does it matter if it's WebAssembly? And I'm not asking you both to agree with me tonight, by the way. I'm just telling you, this is the journey that I've kind of taken as I've watched Blazor grow over the last 18 months and going to be shipped as Razor components, which I have heard they're also hostable in other frameworks. Like apparently you can, and I don't know how to do this. It might be interesting to learn how, and maybe it's not ready yet. But, the blog post says Razor components make them. The blog post from the ASP.NET team says what Razor components buys you is the ability to host these in multiple places. Like maybe you'd host them in a different framework. I don't know. I think we have to let it shake out a little bit. But hopefully that was interesting to folks to see, that right there in the Google developer tools, we're watching .NET DLLs come flying down. And then when I'm making a web call back to a JSON file in this case, but it could have been a web API. If you were in MVC or in Razor Pages, you would have seen a post, and then the server would have had to have made the call for you, and then it would have built, using the template, would have built your view out, and it would have sent that back.
Right.
That didn't happen. This was the SPA world of, let me just go get what I need, pull it back. I have everything I need to render it. And we also saw that little counter thing, right? There was no JavaScript there.
Nope.
C#, right? So to me, I find it really interesting, and I'm definitely watching it in 2019. There's some folks on the web and on Twitter who are really paying attention to this. Like I mentioned Ed Charbonneau earlier, who is all over this and has a Twitch stream and YouTube videos. He's really, really taken up the cause of Blazor here. So I'm excited to see it grow over the next few months as we head toward the .NET Core 3 release. So.
And that kind of is, that timeline for that is kind of that's where they're heading towards, right? That timeline for getting it when first pre out?
Yeah, so the Razor components, the server-side Blazor hosting model, from what I read from the ASP.NET team,
Yep.
is that shipping in .NET Core 3, committed to ship it, which is shipping second half of this year, but we don't know the date, and we're going to find out at build. So in May.
In about a month. Yep.
I guess they're going to come to May. They're probably sitting there right now, looking at a calendar, sweating bullets. I know I would be. When will we ship this?
Right.
Now, does that mean Blazor doesn't work? Well, you've seen some working, but certainly they've got a ways to go. I think part of the ways to go is they would like the WebAssembly portion to be smaller.
Mm-hmm.
They do a form of tree shaking right now, so that you write a bunch of code and you take in a bunch of .NET libraries, but you only use one method out of it.
Yeah.
They don't want to send down system.net.http full.
Right.
So they are already doing some shaking of that. And what they've said on videos like NDC conference, you can watch this being talked about, or even whenever, I think Dan Roth talked about it yesterday in the Visual Studio launch.
Okay.
I think he did. I didn't get to finish his video. Is they got a long way to go. You know, I did see NDC recently talking about, like, we think we can make this smaller, right? We want to make it faster. They want it to be a competitive SPA framework.
Yeah.
And now .NET developers will have another choice. You know, they've always had server-side choices, and now we're saying, hold on, we have a SPA choice for you that isn't go pick a SPA framework and then hook it up to Web API.
Right.
Because that's what we've had for several years now.
Yeah. That's how you've been doing them. Yeah.
Right.
But,
which is fine. Nobody's saying not to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
But and for developers like us, I not that you know, we like to learn, new things. But when you go into a room of developers who, a lot of them will say, like, hey, we use MVC at work and I love MVC and I don't see a reason to learn JavaScript in depth. I learned just enough to build our views.
Yeah.
They see this and they're just, oh, this is what I want to do. So I think there are a lot of developers that want that experience. So
I think
The 9 to 5 developers?
I'm not making fun
Dark
of
matter
anybody.
developers? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I'm not, because let's face it, man. We've all got to make money or save money for our organizations.
Yeah.
If we're not doing that, then if we're just geeking out,
part of it's saving money, but part of it is also how much, you know, the supportability of it.
sure,
You know, a new framework comes along, it's, oh, I want to build it in this. Well, who's going to take care of it
Yep.
when you leave?
you have to
Yeah.
hire Angular people.
Exactly.
You have to hire React people.
And this kind of gets you a little more closer to the
Yeah.
skill set already kind of already got played.
And I know, like, Chris Love's ears are burning because I'm talking
I
about
want to know what he
Angular,
wants. Yeah.
Angular people and React people.
Yeah.
And I don't blame him. Like, why don't you folks just learn JavaScript? Listen, I'm with you.
Yeah.
But we know that there are organizations and projects where, you know, you want to hire 4 people that are all going to be able to work on the same page.
Yeah.
And hey, it's a fact of life, right? I mean, you want to know what he thinks about it? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, I'd love to have Chris on the Skype call right now and find out what his thoughts are. So.
Yeah, I've talked to them a little bit about it, but I don't want to put words in his mouth.
No, we should reach out to Chris and see if he wants to come on.
I love talking to Chris because he is one of the foremost experts on SEO right now.
Yep.
And understanding what the spiders are doing when they look at your site, and it really scares you to think, like, man, all these tools that we're using and the spiders don't care. They want HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Yep.
That's what they look at, which is true. That's what your browser sees at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
good point. Cool.
So yeah, I hope we experiment with some code a little bit more. Keep the segments hopefully 20-30 minutes and talk about stuff. So just wanted to try that out on our after show here.
Cool. I think one of the things we wanted to kind of wrap up with, and like next a few minutes talking about, is we have Code Camp coming up.
Did I open the Code Camp script?
Or
do you have it?
I already have it.
Okay. Yeah, Code Camp, April 12th and 13th. Thank you. Well, Tony, you've got that wired. I wonder why.
Yeah, that's like my life right now, is everything about Code Camp. As we rapidly approach it, I'm on the phone and with emailing with Bill and Rob. Rob or Bill and I were on the phone on Monday talking about Code Camp last week, even though last week was the MVP Summit, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we were still emailing back and forth about plans. We were talking about it a little bit more tonight. So yeah, so Friday is the all-day sessions, training sessions. There's I think two that aren't completely filled. I know one is Rob Kaiser's, which is a Git training, and I forget who the second one is. But if you haven't signed up, there are two sessions that if you're interested in on Friday, you can sign up for. They would be $76 each. If you go, I'm not interested in either of those, but I see something on Saturday that I'm interested in, you can. I think we still have a few spots open on Saturday, and that's a $20 cost. And what you're getting for the $76. Because I want to make sure people understand this, because when people hear Code Camp, sometimes they think free or this, that, or the other thing. But stop and think. For $76, you get 2 days of training.
Mm-hmm.
One day is a full session with a pretty much an industry expert, either from this area or from out of town, that is teaching you on one topic. And then you get to come on Saturday and go have a choice of, I think it's around 70 sessions, I believe, 50 or 70 sessions. I forget the number right now off the top of my head.
Kind of around 50 to 60.
Okay, 50 to 60. Yeah, I know we have a couple open spots on sessions, so I can't remember the number off the top of my head. But in any event, there's a decent amount of sessions on Saturday that you get to pick from, and then on top of that, that $76 gets you breakfast for Friday, lunch for Friday, an after party for Friday, breakfast for Saturday, lunch for Saturday, after party for Saturday. I mean, where do you go?
No,
where can you go for 2 days, get awesome training by top-notch people, and pay $76? And then for $20 on just Saturday, you get the same thing: breakfast, lunch, after party for Saturday, and you get all those sessions to choose from.
I know. I agree.
I mean, I'm sorry. I've been excited about this. I've been with Philly.net and helping out with them for 11 years, and so that means I've done about 20 code camps. So Bill's done 27 or whatever it is.
28 we're up to now.
28. So you can see that I've pretty much been in it for a long time. I was a big proponent and pushing for when we went to Valley Forge Convention Center. I know there were issues with the sound, but people loved the size of it, and we got huge amounts of people and awesome speakers. We still get awesome speakers, and we still could get a huge amount of people. But it's just we have to balance everything. The convention center wasn't going to give us couldn't provide us what we needed, but in this area. We provide something that gives you 2 days. If you want a big off-site convention center type of thing, there's Tech Bash up in the Poconos area. So that's
awesome.
3 or 4 days. Of again top-notch speakers dedicated. What is it, $300-$400, something about that?
I don't remember.
Oh,
I feel bad about it.
I think it's about.
I think their registration's up on Tech Bash right now. Right?
Registration is ready to go, and it's early bird pricing right now.
There you go, early bird pricing. You get 4 days, water park. Bring the family. So it's kind of. I mean, if you want that type of conference, there's that, and if you want something smaller and more intimate, there's ours, and then there's other things there in the area. So
there's always been those community-driven conferences, right? And this is one of those. This happens to be one of the largest of those, and it certainly is one of the popular. But it's one of those that is. Gets a good bit of value for the money with Friday and Saturday.
I think there's only 2 code camps I know of that are bigger than ours. One is Silicon Valley, obviously, and the other I think is Twin Cities in Minnesota.
Minnesota, yeah.
So, but then I think ours is the third biggest and popular.
Yeah.
So
we have a lot of. Go ahead.
I was going to put you on the spot and say, are we streaming both days?
So yeah, that's a good point. So we are not. We talked. Right now, we're not planning to stream the Friday.
Okay.
The reason being is Friday is a paid session. I think we did the last time we did Friday because you were gracious enough to let us do your session. Yeah, off. And we did the Friday session on that. We didn't want to. A lot of the people who give these sessions, that's what they make their living at. They kind of, or at least a good part of their side income is going around and doing these kind of presentations. We didn't want to take away from that by putting it out to live and also up for our. So, but Saturday we're going to run through. We're going to do pretty much a similar kind of session like we did last time, where we'll have a basically stream the talks that are going to be in our envisioning center, because we have all of the camera equipment there and the sound equipment to capture those. And for the times in between, it's the 15-minute and a half time of the session, we'll come in here and we'll do a little bit of interviews, bring some of the people through. I think, well, I know Chris is doing a Friday session. Chris, if he's doing a Saturday one, maybe we'll bring him in to have that fun raise.
Oh yeah.
Or Blazor, and see about that then. But those kind of discussions, right? Some interesting people who we heard. I know last year we had Sophia, and she's coming out to do the Kids Can Code.
Yeah.
Session, right?
So yeah, Sophia is planning to do a machine learning lab
Nice.
for Kids Can Code.
Yeah.
I know Sarah Patrick is back.
Yep.
We have a lot of our the folks that we're used to seeing. I think Kevin Goff is here. I think I saw him on the. I'm pretty sure I saw him in one of the sessions. Kevin Goff is SQL Server expert, no doubt about it. Who is it? Michael Montgomery.
Yeah,
is here. I mean,
he's doing a couple good sessions. I know one on
architecture services. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this intro programming with Azure Service Fabric.
Yeah,
really amazing.
It's amazing. Rob McKenna is here, who runs the Philly Azure group.
Yep. As is Tim Farrow, who is now a Microsoft employee. He used to run the Philly Azure group.
Yep.
Brian Minnesy. Brian Minnesy, who does another great talk around DevOps.
Oh
right?
yeah, he does. I mean, he came and he did Azure DevOps as a presentation meeting here at Philly.night. The video is archived. 2 hours of like solid. Hey, here's what this thing is from beginning to end. It's fantastic.
And I don't know if it's the same title, but he was and is an ALM Ranger. So is that
right,
still the and ALM is Application Lifecycle Management. So and the Rangers are like specialists in that area, so they go in companies and help people out and things like that. So he's an expert basically.
Nice. And so, are you speaking this time, Chris?
No, I don't have a talk at all. I couldn't commit to a Friday workshop because there's still a good chance that I won't be here right when it starts.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't think it was fair to commit and then say, well, hey, I'm going to be there an hour late.
Yeah.
That may not happen. It's still up in the air.
Okay.
And then Saturday I'm going to be in here. Part of the reason is I'm actually kind of transforming most of my talks. I want to rebuild the way I teach Git from the ground up, and I started on that earlier, and it's just not going to be ready. I'm going to a very it's going to be strange for those of you who've seen me speak, right? It's very slide heavy.
Oh wow.
Instead of being what I normally do is this is just the way I teach. It's like sit down in front of the laptop and I show you me working. And what I found with Git is while people are very gracious, I don't necessarily feel like the content is absorbable. So I'm going extremely slide heavy, and the idea is the slides are reference material. So I think if you hear it in the talk and you see it on the screen and then you walk out, you might forget. What did Chris say about that issue where my colleague committed right after I committed, and darn it, it's happened right now and I don't know what to do.
Right.
Is I want them to be able to go, wait a second, I have the slide deck. I remember, and then, so that's what I'm trying to do. It's almost like writing a book, except in slide form.
That might be the next next iteration.
But really, it's just I put a lot of time into helping teams out of their Git troubles, and trying to get people to deal with this thing, and not just a lot of people either don't like it or they just use as part of their workflow. They're like, well, I can't figure it out, so
I'll call Chris.
So let me save the files I was working on over here, delete the repo, clone it again. Like that is part of people's workflow.
Sure.
And it's
I never thought about doing that.
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. So hey, let's fix this. So anyways, the Git talk I'm redoing, and actually Blazor.
So maybe for November then.
Oh yeah. Those are the two.
Nice.
So
okay. And then Tony, you're speaking, right?
I am. I'm sorry. I was also reading comments that were coming in from
Oh.
our YouTube because I can see them. So Meg is saying yes, the first session in Marion, which I'm not sure what the first session in Marion is, but I can see Rich is looking it up, and she's also saying David Harath is
Yeah, maybe we haven't figured that
double
out yet.
booked at 3. Oh, we'll look at that.
We'll have to go tell
Thank
Bill.
you. Yeah, I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, I think
I agree with you that I think the Git docs are actually, they deserve a lot more credit than they get. I think people get afraid, like, oh, I can't possibly understand the Git docs, and they're actually quite remarkable.
They're pretty good, yeah.
So
and to circle back and answer Rich's question, I am giving a talk. I'm actually branching out. I haven't in the last few years actually given a technical talk. I've been more on career advice. That's been a kick for me for the last 3 or 4 years because I think developers and technical people, and whether you're quality assurance, quality engineering, software engineering, I think we just struggle with how to communicate what value we add to the company, or what value we bring to the table, or how to communicate with people on a personal basis, on a one-on-one, or even just how to sell ourselves. So I've been really pushing that, and I'm taking a step back from that. But Apex Systems, who was here last month for our meeting, is coming out and giving a similar talk to what they gave last month. So if you are interested in career advice, look for I think it's Kara Winter, and I forget who she's with, but Apex Systems will be giving that talk. And then for me, I'm going back to a more technical talk, focusing on Pivotal Cloud Foundry, in particular Cloud Foundry, what Cloud Foundry is, and who Pivotal Cloud Foundry is. It's a you come to the session. I'm not diving deep. It's more of a high level. I'm not gonna give you the command line interface commands. I'm gonna tell you some stuff about Cloud Foundry. I might give you some command line interfaces. It depends. I'm trying to finish up my presentation now. I'm working on a certification for it, and I'm working on a presentation for it. So I'm putting that together. I've been kind of studying it for the last few months, I guess you could say.
Cool.
So that's what I'm doing. Are you giving anything, Rick?
I'm not. So Chris and I are kind of manning the fort here on the live streams, making sure that inevitably there is something that requires attention, ability, and
so one thing we're gonna do, which we didn't do as well last time, is we didn't moderate the sessions as well.
No, it's true.
We just didn't have the ability to, being separated from them. I think this time we will probably be a little bit more on that. Although one of the things I am going to do is some of the sessions, if we're going to have the speaker in, I usually try and see about 20 minutes of it.
Yeah.
Just so I have something to talk to him about and learn something from him instead of saying, so
about that session.
So what did you do?
What
did we learn?
Yeah.
So I might be in and out, but I think we're going to try to do a little bit better job of if you have a question, is I don't know if I'll sit in envisioning or something like that.
Yeah.
Or we could get it out.
Get a couple different people to kind of rotate through that.
Yeah.
So
because we didn't do that last time.
No.
And we had a lot of viewers last time. We had a fair amount. We had a good number from the host from the Visual Studio channel.
Yeah, that's
true
too.
Over on Twitch, and so those folks, I think, they come here and they say, well, hey, I should be able to ask the speaker a question. So
yeah.
And I think we've got some great questions tonight. I'm glad for the folks who stuck around with us. Thank you very much for staying with us tonight.
Yeah, we might try and switch the venue up. We were talking about it a little bit beforehand, but
I was throwing a monkey wrench in things. I was saying, so I watch a lot of Mixer, and one of the people that I watch is called X1 Bros. Have you ever heard of them?
I think so.
Yeah. So they do a podcast. It's actually, I think they actually put it out in podcast form, but it's live streamed through Mixer, kind of like Larry Herb does. But I was suggesting that we have this room outside of our awesome studio. While I like the background in the studio, we also have like a lounge room outside of here that I thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if it was just Chris, Rich, and I sitting on the couch, and you captured us shooting the breeze. And I'm not saying that's an every week thing. Maybe once a month, maybe once every or once a month. I meant like once every couple months or once a quarter is what I was thinking, because we do this only twice a month. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so something like that we could.
Unless we do
You
it
know.
next Wednesday.
We are
Unless
going
we
to do
do
it
it
next
next
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Well, that's true. We should. Yeah, we'll definitely do the night one next
We're
Wednesday.
working on it being weekly. Can't.
But yeah,
We're
our
working on
schedules
it.
are- yeah,
Yeah,
and equipment, which
Okay.
should be here tomorrow, Friday.
yeah.
So,
So,
I'll be good with that.
so I
And
thought that
then-
would be kind of neat, just because this started. I mean, Chris and Rich are definitely the brainchild of this. I'm just a tag along. But the three of us used to hang out
Oh yeah.
in the parking lot
Right.
talking for like an hour. Then it was, we'd follow Rich around like lost puppies through the Microsoft Office, talking to him and stealing soda. I mean, being offered sodas. And then, then
Why
it
not
was,
capture
hey,
the
let's
conversation?
capture
Why
it
not capture the
online.
conversation, right?
So,
Because this would be fun.
Yeah.
Instead of having it in the parking lot, which many people do after Philly.net,
yeah.
why don't we capture that hour here for you and take your questions? So
Yeah, there's some cool code. Talk about some of the cool stuff coming up. So
yeah, let us know what you liked. We're gonna try, code segments again. Talk about what we talked about at the meeting, and then sometimes not talk about what we talked about at the meeting. That's fine too.
Yeah.
So if you have questions for us or topics, please let us know. Make sure that you
Bring it to Mackenzie's.
the videos you
Nice.
like the videos, comment on them, so that we hear from you. We know, hey, we like this, and it's okay if you think some things aren't working too. We're learning. We're learning. So,
And if you got a cool something cool you want to talk about, or something like that, we had Andy on a couple weeks ago. Love to have reach out to one of us. Let's see if we can figure some way to bring you into a
Yeah.
stream here.
absolutely.
Lots of cool things we can do that way. So I think with that,
Yeah, I think we're good
kind
for
of wrap
tonight.
it up.
So again, thank you everybody who joined us. Thank you Tony, and thank you Rich for producing
And
Yep.
and
thank you,
saving
Chris.
saving the Blazor demo.
Woohoo! Yeah. I don't know.
Appreciate that.
All of a sudden, it just lit up. So it's all
Oh, good. I hope it's
All
on
right.
my laptop.
Yeah.
All right. Have
All
a
right.
good night, everybody.
Thanks,
we'll see
everyone.
you online.
Bye.
Because I had that same issue.